This episode is proudly supported by Crunch. Running a hospitality business isn't for the faint-hearted. Between ordering stock, scheduling rosters, paying bills, motivating your team, and keeping customers happy, there's a lot on your plate. It's no surprise that business planning often gets put on the back burner. Well, here's something that can help. Introducing Crunch, a new app to help simplify the business side of hospo. With Crunch, you get access to practical, bite-sized education, proven strategies, and a supportive community of hospo owners just like you. When it comes to the Crunch, if you're looking for proven ways to build a successful, sustainable business, Crunch has you covered. Try Crunch now. To get 14 days free, just head to crunchhospo.com.au.
I get excited by the idea that, in the future, if my daughter or my son, wants to be a chef, that they've got these opportunities to step into these kitchens and learn a whole new culture, and they're all run by just passionate, amazingly talented people.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. French bistros were once a large part of the fabric of our culinary landscape, and although they've experienced somewhat of a renaissance, there are some that have stood the test of time and become the fabric of the community. Matt Barnett is the chef and co-owner of Bronte Road Bistro in Sydney. Matt, how are you?
Hi, Huck. Yeah, I'm great, thank you.
It's awesome to get you on the show. You got a wonderful little bistro there. How are things at the moment?
Yeah, things are great. We've just come off Father's Day weekend. We had a massive weekend, and the weather was kind to us. It was beautiful spring weather, and it was massive.
It's been around for a little while now, Bronte Road Bistro. How have things been the last couple of years for you guys? You're such a hub of the community, but has it changed the way you do things?
Look, we're just coming up to 17 years. So it's been a long time, and look, we've evolved quite a lot, and the last few years have been good. There's certainly been some challenges, but I feel like that's sort of made us really focus in on what we do and really put the magnifying over it and making sure that we're sort of doing everything the best we can, we sort of run it 90% regulars, and they come in multiple times a week, and they really drive the business. They really drive us. We sort of listen out for them, and they definitely let us know what they like and what they don't like, and that kind of helps us sort of, mold the business.
I guess I kind of think of you guys as a modern sort of French bistro, but how do you describe what you do to people, and give us a sense of a couple of dishes on the menu that sort of speak of what you're doing?
I like to think that we're sort of French influenced, and very casual. Like I say, people come in two times a week, and we kind of, people have their things that they like. We kind of constantly evolving the menu, but there's a lot of things that have been there for a long time, and people sort of know that's their dish, and they'll come in every week and have that dish. Things like, obviously we have our steak frites that we're probably more famous for, but we have a duck, like a confit duck. We have a spatchcock, and we have like a lot of influences outside of French, but we always sort of add a bit of a French touch to it. Like we have a spatchcock, which is sort of marinated a bit of preserved lemon and some parsley and some garlic, and that's sort of barbecued off, and then I'll put it with like a jus gras. So there's always French touches around the food. You're
co-owner with Stuart Parsons, who's a bit of a legend in the industry, but a quiet achiever too. What's it like working together in a small sort of bistro as part of the community like that?
It's great. I've certainly learned a lot of Stuart, and I'd like to think he's learned a little bit off me as well. So we kind of work out quite well. That he's great with the wine, and he takes care of all of the front. and I take care of the back. But really, we have such a tight little team. And I mean, we haven't had a staff change for 4 years. I mean, we've got staff there that have been with us for 10 years. So we kind of all yeah, it is. It's really unique, and it's so great for the regulars and the customers. Everyone knows everyone, and it is. It's such like a family, you know. We always get a kick out of it when the customers come in, and yeah, our regulars walk in. They're like, you know, they say, you know, oh, it just feels like home, and that's the type of environment and the type of restaurant that we both love. We're a bit of an old school people, and yeah, that's the kind of environment that we're trying to nurture and have in the restaurant.
One of the things that I remember the last time I dined there was a butterflied garfish, and it was just so simple and on the plate. But you know, that sort of restraint often comes with maturity. When it really shows in your food. When did it sort of land for you, that restraint on the plate?
I think it's just slowly. I was never into a fine dining sort of setup. I've never really clicked to that sort of really intricate stuff. I've always loved rustic sort of type of food. But like I think any young chef, you kind of you're gunning to be the superstar, or you're gunning when you're younger. But as I have gotten older, um, and I guess the produce as well. I've gone out and looked for the produce, and it's just so good these days. And it's just you just do as little to it as possible, and that's what I get the joy out of.
Well, I want to explore what you guys are doing there, and also what the eastern suburbs of Sydney is, how much it's changed over the period of time that you've had Bronte Road Bistro as well. But take us back to when you were young. Whereabouts did you grow up, and what sort of role did food play?
I grew up on the beaches, Central Coast, in a suburb called Baddo Bay, and I was never grown up in a foodie family as such. We were very plain eaters. My mum and dad were very plain eaters. I did have an auntie who was the food sort of person around me, and she had a cafe and she did some catering, and that was kind of my first look into like any big occasion like Christmas or birthdays or anything. We would always go over to her house for a lunch or a dinner, and we were always excited to go there because we knew we were going to have a fantastic meal. And that was kind of my first introduction to how good food could be and how you could get excited about it. And it kind of all started from there. And then, yeah.
Where did you first get your foot in the door when you started a career?
Yeah, well, I started when I was very young. I mean, school was kind of never for me. And I started 13. I was doing a kitchen hand job for just for some pocket money. And it was in a local Italian restaurant. And I always remember the first shift I did, it was a Saturday night. And having never eaten out we didn't really eat out at restaurants when I was younger. So this kind of my first look into it, and especially behind the scenes. And the wash-up area was kind of sitting right next to where the mains were. And I remember my first shift Saturday night, and I went in there, and I was just awestruck by the buzz, and the shouting, and the dockers getting called away, and the waiters coming, and everything was just going and going and going. And I was just so awestruck by it. And I remember getting home, and I think I barely slept that night. Like I was just so buzzing, and it I really loved it. And I was like, I found myself at school. I mean, I worked there 4 nights a week, and I found myself at school like waiting for the clock to tick down because I was just so pumped and excited to get back there because I just loved that buzz feeling. And it was from there that I just continued on and got an apprenticeship when I was 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
You spent some time working with Hugh Whitehouse at the legendary Milsons. Do you have any stories of what it was like working with Hugh?
That was my first sort of foray into like a hatted restaurant, a really high standard, and he was amazing. His attention to detail and his knowledge, and I kind of went in there quite green, and I worked in every section, and like I'd never done anything to do with pastry, and he would just throw me on the pastry section, and everything was made in house. It's kind of that was kind of one of the first places that everything was made. Everything was made in house. Nothing was bought in, and so I learned so much off him. And it was the same thing. My first shift was a Saturday night, and I did a trial, and we had he called it like the wok station, and it had like 4 or 5 levels in this steamer, and we were doing a steamed barramundi in there, and he was just calling the dockets and putting these fish in the steamer, and then I'd never done any of this before, and before I knew I had like 14 fish at all different varying levels of cooking, and I was trying to keep on top of it, and yeah, it was a baptism of fire on that trial.
You mentioned how green you were when you first sort of joined the team at Milson's. How different were you when you finally left?
Oh, changed. It was amazing, like having, quite a good knowledge on pastry and things, even just knowledge of produce. The cheese board we had there had like 12 or 13 different cheeses. Now, before that, it was just basic cheese that I knew. But before I left there, I knew 20, 30 different cheeses and all of the various regions that they came from and the makers. And so it was a lot of produce, learning about produce and learning about all these different suppliers. So I kind of left there with not only knowledge of cooking, but knowledge of producers that I carried with me and to the next restaurant that I went.
You're from the era of chefs where London is the trajectory for many young chefs sort of cutting their teeth. You travelled intensely overseas and worked, but the UK wasn't really your target. Tell us what you did.
Yeah, I chose my first stop when I went there was Canada, and I kind of had in my head that I'd been working here, and I thought I'm going to do an overseas trip and just take a little breather from cooking, have a year of fun, because I kind of did do an apprenticeship when I was very early, finished the apprenticeship and kind of went straight into doing restaurant things. I never really had a year off from school or anything like that, so I thought I'll go to Canada and do a bit of snowboarding and have a bit of a year of fun. And but I sort of rocked up there, and I thought I'll do something like ticketing or snow ploughing or just something fun that's outside of what I normally do, just for a bit of a change. But as I sort of rocked up to Whistler and handed in my resume, and but yeah, I didn't go too far, and they were kind of sold me, like saw the resume, saw the chefing. They really badly needed chefs, and there was a management position there for a head chef of the actual resort itself. And I was like, "Whoa, this is a big step." And but then they sold it to me like, you're going to be on, if you were to do this job, this is how much money you'll get. If you do this job, you're going to get 3 times the amount. You don't have to stay in the staff accommodation. We'll put you up in a full house. You'll be able to snowboard all day. And they sold it to me like that. So I kind of went straight for it and got thrown in and was in charge of sort of 3-4 different restaurants and 50 staff, and making sure that they all turn up and they're not up there snowboarding.
What was it like for you? Did you feel like you were sinking, or did you find your feet?
Yeah, no, I found. I mean, for those first few weeks, it was pretty tough. But I had, they had a great executive chef there who sort of was helping me along the way. But then once we got going, there was a lot of good systems in place, and it was just following the systems and doing all of that.
It's a little bit removed from a hatted establishment like Milson's, but what did you take from your time at the ski resort?
Large kitchens, management, how important it is to have systems in place, and following system, and a whole lot of ordering. Like, the trucks sort of only came up to the mountain twice a week, so you kind of had to have everything in play. You couldn't just go down to the local shop and pick something up if you forgot. So it was a lot to do with that. So the management of large places was kind of what I got out of it. I would say when I did do a stint in Normandy in France in a bed and breakfast there. It was owned by an English businessman, and with it being a bed and breakfast, there was large chunks of time that there wasn't any guests staying, so it allowed me to go out and travel around And I kind of would go exploring. I was always drawn to French bistros, and it was that whole buzz again. And I would always find myself, I love the idea of the rough edge of it, where you could walk into the bistro and I remember always walking in and there was trays of cassoulet on one thing, and another on a bench over here would be a couple of tarts that was just cooked that you could just order a slice of, and just the coming and going of people and the buzz and all of that. And that, I kind of knew then that this is the kind of place that I want, when I get older. So I kind of went from there and just really studied in on French, and always tried to eat out as much as I could, and really focused in on French. That kind of was the turning point for me to say that this is what I want to do.
Tell us about your return to Sydney. Was it different from when you left?
It wasn't. I thought it would be. I sort of thought, I came back expecting, to explore all of these new big changes, and I kind of came back and it was the same as when I left in a way, which was kind of good.
Take us back to that period of time. Like, where did you get your foot in the door when you did get back in Sydney?
When I got back, I actually got recommended to, there was a job at the Ensemble Theatre, and they had a pre-theatre restaurant in there. And that was kind of, in Australia, my first sort of head chef gig. And I got recommended to go there, and I had just come back and arrived. So I kind of took that job on, and it was very different. It definitely taught me, being a pre-theatre restaurant, you had such limited time, because the show started no matter what, whether the kitchen was running late, the show starts, so you had to be ready. So that really taught me to hone in on the fast pace and getting it, putting everything the best you can at a fast pace. And I've sort of brought that systems that I learnt from overseas, and all of that structure came into play there, where I really had to have systems in play and have it all down pat. So it all went smooth. I couldn't afford anything to go wrong.
The Ensemble Theatre restaurant was quite well known back in the day. Well, there must have been some crazy nights trying to get things out in time. Do you have any stories of the sort of the madness of those days?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was, so many nights. There was, I think, only on 2 occasions we had to stop the show. We had just to try to run upstairs, but yeah, just the chaos of that final 15 minutes where, like, are we going to make it? I'm not sure if we're going to make it. And then you have to send the restaurant manager upstairs to tell the guys and the ushers to stop the show, stop letting people in. And that was in the middle of a service when the power went out. The power went out for like 15 minutes. So then that put us 15 minutes behind, and it was crazy.
Before Bronte Road Bistro, you actually made a name for yourself with Element Bistro, which was your first foray as an owner. How different was it, sort of owning your own restaurant for the first time as opposed to being the head chef?
Yeah, it was. I took over, Paul Maroney's Bistro 163. That opportunity came up, and I was 29 at the time. But it was too good an opportunity to pass up, so I kind of went for it. And I guess I didn't really think about whether there was going to be such a big difference between sort of working and owning something. So I kind of just went in there like I was the head chef, but that was I soon realised that it was very different. And it was exciting and it was fun, but yeah, you soon learn that on your day off, nobody gets paid unless you pay people. Whereas as a head chef, you have someone who does all that for you, or to do all the bookwork. So my days off were then spent doing the bookwork and things like that. But it was incredibly rewarding. I think it was a very different feeling when it's your own. So yeah, it was incredibly rewarding.
Tell us a bit about Element Bistro and what you were doing there. Do you have any stories of kind of fond memories of that time?
Yeah, it was my. That's what made me fall in love with it. It was my ideal. It was set on in King Street, and it was a little underground, sort of 25 or 30 seat. It had a real bistro feel to it, and it was just myself in the kitchen, myself and one kitchen hand. But it was just, it was my ideal restaurant that I envisioned in my head. When I was in France and seeing all of these bistros and these tiny little pokey holes, and I looked at Element, it was like, yes, this is what I've been looking for, and it was amazing. And it was fast paced. It was set up where all the law courts and that are, so that all the lawyers and things like that, and they were on 1 hour lunch break, so it was all very fast paced. But it gave me the freedom to we had a big chalkboard menu where I could just put on whatever I wanted for the day, and it was amazing. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
That was 2 decades ago now. How different is running a restaurant now compared to those days of Element Bistro?
I think, Element Bistro I was doing on my own. So everything was on my shoulders, everything was on my back. And whereas I find now having a business partner, it's amazing. That's such the difference between doing it solo and doing it, with a business partner. I mean, we often joke, me and Stuart, that, our partnerships last longer than most marriages. Uh, that's our joke, and it's right. We lean on each other and bounce off each other. It's just nice to have that person there that you can sort of lean on and bounce ideas together, and yeah, you don't sort of feel like you're on your own.
How did that partnership begin with Stuart?
Well, I had 5 years Element, and I got a bit of a swift lesson on landlords and how it all works. And my lease was due to come up. We'd been trying to discuss it with them, and then one day they just came in and said, "That's it. We're developing the building, and you're out." And so it was printed in the Good Food that's what was happening, and Stuart happened to read it and was looking for a business partner at the time, and gave me the phone call and said, "How would you like to come over to Bronte?" And having grown up on the beaches, and I'd been in the city for the 5 years, and in the dark city in the underground, and the idea of being out by the beaches again, like where I grew up, was really appealing. So that made me go across there, and haven't looked back since.
What was the first couple of years like with Bronte Road Bistro? Do you have any stories of sort of the challenges and the successes of that period?
Yeah, it was a bit of a leap to go from sort of 20 seats, 25 seats in the city, and it was myself in the kitchen and a kitchen hand, and then to go to a sort of 70-seater where they were doing 80 people, 80 people, and then I've got sort of three in the kitchen. So there was a little bit of a period there where I kind of got in that mentality of trying to do everything myself, not utilising the staff I had because I'd been on my own for the last 5 years. So there was a challenge there to sort of reboot myself to know that I have staff, and to get into doing services of 80 people again. But yeah, it was just nice to have sun coming through the kitchen and all that. It was all of these small things that you take for granted, and I was really aware of them.
Did that sort of business model shift, did that change your food at all?
No, I think it improved my food. I think I had more hands. I wasn't doing everything on my own, so I brought a few of my dishes from Element over, and they're still there to this day. Some of them, and but yeah, I thought it improved. It gave me more room. The kitchen was bigger, everything. So it kind of expanded and expanded my ability to be able to do things.
Near the top of the show, you mentioned about how important good produce is to that sort of simplicity on the plate that you're so good at. Tell us about your sourcing and some of the connections and the different fish or produce that is really important to what you do.
Yeah, I kind of being sort of in the kitchen and having other staff around, which has allowed me to sort of branch out and go driving down to the fish market, or I'll drive off to the egg farm, or I'll drive. I never really had the time to do that. Like when I was in the city, it was just a lot of, I had to be there. It wasn't going to get prepped unless I was prepping it. Whereas kind of now it's allowed me to sort of move around and see things for myself. I was going out to the veggie markets there for a while in the mornings, and I love just wandering around and meeting people and just really broadening my connections with people. and yeah, and a connection with John Sussman. Like he sort of Stuart introduced me to him, and we have a good chat, and he tells me lots of good stuff and about what's around, and then connects me to people at the market. So I'm often at the fish markets a couple of times a week and talking and seeing what's coming up and what's around, and yeah. So that type of thing sort of allows me to get the inside of what's coming up.
That dedication that you have to seafood is it shows on the plate. Is there any sort of particular species that you love to cook that you look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we're doing a lot of King George whiting. That we seem to get a lot of good feedback from that, and people often are asking for it. And I really enjoy that. It's a very delicate, very simple, and I just simply put it on a tray with a little bit of olive oil and just gently cook it. That's it. It doesn't need anything else. And a little bit of a beurre blanc. That's what we're currently doing at the moment. Yeah.
You're making me hungry. That sounds incredible. You mentioned about owning your own business for the first time and sort of that transitional period. What sort of advice would you have for someone that's perhaps about to begin their own business and taking on that sort of leap?
I would say get your don't underestimate the importance of business knowledge. It isn't just all about just cooking and food and all of that. And I probably did make a little bit of that mistake. I mean, none of my family have ever owned a business or anything like that. And I kind of just went in there and thought to myself, I'll just learn as I go along. And it's always not that easy, because you kind of, there's a lot of harsh lessons that were learnt for me. And so my advice would be definitely, take that seriously, that business side of things, and really get your knowledge down and your costings and know the importance of what happens when your costings are out. Like, it's not a simple case of, oh, well, this week it was 40%. Oops. It's not quite that simple. It's it does alter everything. So really, it's just know that, sort of take the time to know the business.
You mentioned as well that more hands on deck allowed you to become a better chef. Was that hard for you to delegate and let go of certain roles?
Yeah, definitely. That was a big challenge to start with, because it was kind of, and especially being a new thing for me, a new restaurant. So I wanted to make sure everything was perfect, and I kind of had that. In the city, I could see everything going out the window because I was doing it. Whereas here, it's like I was worried I was going to miss something. So then I would always be trying to do everything, and it really just threw the dynamic of the kitchen off, because then the chefs that I had there were kind of like, oh, what are we doing? Am I supposed to be doing that? Not because I was just sort of. It took me a while to sort of adjust and understand that I've got other hands here, and to really put trust in that.
Food in Sydney has changed so much in the last 2 decades, and Bronte Road Bistro has been there through that whole period of time, and things like social media have had a huge impact on the industry. How do you see restaurants and the change that's happened, and how you guys fit into all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think it's exciting what's happening now. I mean, I look around and I look at, it's so many diverse restaurants now. I mean, back when I started out, I had my local Thai, I had Chinese and very simple things. Whereas I look around now and there's Peruvian restaurants, there's Filipino, and these are all top of their game. And they're all driven by these passionate young chefs who are so proud of their culture, and they're so proud of showing everybody that. We have a girl in Sydney, Ahana Dutt. She's amazing in Bengali cuisine, and she does pop-ups, and they're just so passionate about showing their culture and what they do. And I feel, back when we started the bistro, there wasn't a huge amount of that, and now there's just so much diversity that you can have French, like you can have a beautiful French bistro, or you can go and have a beautiful Filipino, or you can do this, and you can learn. And I get excited by the idea that, in the future, if my daughter or my son, wants to be a chef, that they've got these opportunities to step into these kitchens and learn a whole new culture, and they're all run by just passionate, amazingly talented people.
You mentioned a little earlier about, like 90% of your clientele are return visitors, and some of them are there a couple of times a week, which is extraordinary. What sort of impact does sort of what they want to eat have on your dish creation?
Everything. I'm a big believer in listening. We're very much not a chef's restaurant. We kind of go across all facets of the place, the front of house, the back. So for me, they kind of driving the menu really. I always try things out, and they either order it or they don't. And really, it's 90% of them just won't order it. So we kind of know, okay, they don't really like that. So then I'll put something else on. I mean, we put on. I tried out just a classic retro, old school pepper steak. It was, fillet just crusted with pepper, with a sauce and some frites, and it just runs out the door. And we've had it. I can't take it off now. And then I can try something else, and it just doesn't click. So they kind of dictate to me what I'm putting on and which direction I kind of go on. So we kind of feeling that they love that kind of retro style. So that kind of makes me lean towards that way when I'm coming up with something new.
2 decades for any restaurant is really quite extraordinary. What are the secrets in sort of longevity? What do you think are the elements that allow a restaurant like Bronte Road Bistro to stand the test of time?
Constantly evolve. We just constantly keep evolving, moving with the time, and really look at it as a whole business. It's not just a chef's restaurant; it's the whole business. It's the constant upkeep of the business. Like, we've just got a beautiful new awning out the front. We're getting the floors polished today. Like, it's just constantly upkeeping the restaurant. We've got the wine list keeps expanding. Stuart's got some amazing wines in a collection that keeps coming on. So our wine list is getting better and better, and it's growing. I've got a beautiful reserve list, and same with the food. We just keep evolving it, and I keep trying new things and keep searching out for new produce. So I think for us, we're also passionate about what we do, and we're lucky enough to have staff that have been with us for so long. So we kind of all just click and work together. So it's I think the secret is just keep evolving.
Well, there's so many people in Sydney that love what you guys do, but what is it that you love about what you do?
I think I loved it when I was 14, and I love it exactly the same as it is now. I haven't changed, and I still love the buzz of it. And I love the idea that you don't really know what's going to happen next week. I might find some amazing, thing next week, some amazing produce that's going to pop up next week. So I think it's exciting, the unknown, and you just can keep creating and keep coming up, and I like the idea of the community around, the hospitality community, the people that are popping up with new places. I love going out and exploring and sourcing new things, new restaurants.
Well, Matt, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story, and I look forward to the next decade or so of Bronte Road Bistro as well.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.